Emma, you've given us so much to think about and really reframe. I love what you said about dream role, not dream job. I love what you said about really getting deep and asking those questions and having others who are in your orbit help you get deep and find out what it is that brings you joy. I love what you said about. A growth mindset, how important it is, where I'm not good at that yet. I thought that, and we're going to talk about extracurriculars now, because this was something that I've heard you talk about, the importance of maybe you're good at theater, but maybe look beyond theater. And this is the time to take a look at some of the other skills that you have never thought about, but that might bring you joy. Can you make mention of that?
Absolutely. So where it comes to extracurricular activities, I think sometimes there can be a challenging focus on being the absolute star of one activity and just going very deep rather than trying something a little outside your comfort zone because people worry, what if I fail? And then that's not the type of thing I can put on my college application. I think something important to keep in mind is that, first of all, if there's ever a moment to fail and to take risks, it's when you are in high school and when you're at a younger age, because that's not in the context of a job yet. You are literally in the space in life that's designed for you to take risks and to leave your comfort zone and to try new things. There's never going to be a better time. So I think the younger you are, the more skewing toward that explore versus exploit side of the spectrum makes sense. And I think what that means in the context of extracurriculars is even if you see the possibility of becoming a star at one given activity, try something at least once that's surprising and unconventional. I know I definitely did that myself when I was in high school, and it's something I'm very grateful for, even when that meant trying out for the softball team and definitely not something I ever use at all in my day-to-day now, thankfully, because I was really terrible at it. But it still teaches you the kinds of teamwork skills or leadership skills or just unexpected skills that are going to be just good, arrows to have in your quiver. And with the explore exploit dilemma, something that researchers who look at it talk about is a concept called local maxima, which means if you're, out hiking and you're climbing different hills, you might get to the top of a small hill and say, I did it. I see a great view. I'm just going to stay up here. But if you actually take the challenging step of going down the hill, you might find an even bigger one that's going to challenge you, but also get you an even better view. So just because you're getting really good at something doesn't mean you should stay settled there. It might mean try hopping to something else because that other thing is going to stay present for you. But now is the opportunity to try and even potentially fail.
It was great what you said about buttonholing people. Fun when you see someone, actually all people, grab their button, have a conversation with them, learn about their job. It might be something you never imagined. There's some great questions here. We're going to get to them. First, I'd like to have Samantha ask a question. We've got a student from Fenton who's going to be posing a question to you. Samantha?
Hi, my name's Samantha. I was wondering how we can incorporate these ideas into the high school curriculum. Thank you so much for your presentation. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. That's such a wonderful question. I would say that something that can be really, really helpful in high school is finding an opportunity to shadow someone on the job. Because I think it can be, all well and good to sit in a classroom and learn about what a medical career might look like or what a journalism career might look like, but nothing beats actually being in the workplace, following someone for a day and seeing what their day-to-day involves. I know I've, hosted young people at the New York Times before, and something I find is that they're always surprised by what an actual journalist day-to-day looks like. Like, oh, that's a lot of time, yelling into the phone or running around trying to ask other people questions about their areas of expertise. So to the extent it's possible to build in a job shadowing into your school curriculum in some way, even if it's just for a couple of days, it can just be super useful and also help you start to make connections that'll pay off later on.
Thank you.
Next, Thank you. Thank you, Samantha. We're going to take a question from someone that wrote into the chat. She's also thanking you for this presentation. In a world where the careers of tomorrow can't even be imagined, helping young people envision their future by looking at what can only be done by humans is so important. Then also knowing that a career should align with what brings us joy and is guided by the heart. Lovely comment. And then the question by that person, thank you, Karen, is what role do you see parents playing in helping young people explore future careers?
That is a really wonderful question. I think that, sometimes the conversations that parents and children have can feel high pressure if it feels very fixated on one specific job. Like, do you imagine yourself becoming a doctor? Well, then remember, it's a lot of years of medical training. Or do you imagine yourself becoming a lawyer? Remember, like, law school is very challenging. I would say conversations that focus again on the joy and meaning that can be found in careers can help make this a really positive experience and mind opening and expansive rather than only focused on the intimidation factor. So I would say focusing on what brings you joy, as you noted in your comment. But I would also say having broad conversations that help people actually start to understand themselves. Because I think one of the things that can be challenging with career planning is when we're really narrowly fixated on only the sorts of jobs that we see, even on TV, for example, or even amongst people that we know. But the types of careers available to people are so expansive. And I saw this firsthand from classmates of mine in college who went on to sorts of careers that probably in high school didn't exist or they could never have imagined, whether that's working in climate change and sustainability or therapy and social work. They might not have imagined themselves going into that. So I would say conversations that help people start to reflect on what they love doing, what brings
Mhm,
them joy, and what their values are.
mhm.
That can start to be really helpful because it takes away some of the intimidation factor of only focusing on the sorts of training that connects people to really high pressure and maybe very visible or well-known careers.
Excellent. Nick, it's your turn.
Hello, my name is Nicholas, and I had a question regarding. I know you said before that about one third of people that have jobs are unhappy with that. Is there any way that they can go about changing that way of life? Because that number is pretty scary to me, and I'm thinking about what I want to do in life, and seeing that so many people are unhappy, that just I want to see how maybe if they do are already in that position, how could they go about changing that? And again, thank you
Mm,
for your time for the presentation. I thought it was also really good.
wonderful.
Yeah, that's such a great question. It is. I also have been sometimes alarmed looking at that number and thinking, really, that's it? I would say there's a lot of different ingredients that someone can sort of grab onto to try and even make their day-to-day better. One is a relationship with mentors and supervisors on the job. Because one thing that really can make a day-to-day of a job more challenging is if you don't necessarily see the long-term picture of what you're building toward. Not just how am I fulfilling my duties day to day, but what sort of career am I building toward? So I would say initiating conversations with mentors or supervisors to talk about what your 5 year or 1 year or even 3 month goals are, like what's a new skill you want to get really good at, or what's a project that you want to put out into the world, even if it's sort of a little bit outside of your core responsibilities. What's something that will make you proud, and get that person bought in on making sure you achieve those goals. Because I think a really important part of a meaningful job is just a sense of forward motion, like a sense that you are moving forward toward goals that are important to you. So I think
Mhm.
setting those goals for yourself, sharing them with someone, and then asking that person to kind of hold you accountable. All of those things can make the day to day of a job a lot more meaningful.
Thank you, Nick. Here's a question. Mainstream media reports that Americans no longer have faith in the need for a college education. What are your thoughts on this issue?
It's a great question. I have done a lot of research on this question of like the diploma divide, and some people are casting doubt on maybe the need for a college diploma for future careers. I will say that researchers that I've spoken with emphasize that even though there are more and more jobs that are being opened up to people without a college degree, we still have to ask, are those good jobs? Are those the best jobs? And are those the jobs that offer the sort of stability, benefits, pay, and mobility and growth opportunities that someone might want? So there are people who do wonderful research on this, including at the Aspen Institute. And what they tend to emphasize is a lot of the jobs that still are sort of by their definition of what qualifies as the very best, those still require a college degree, even as others take that requirement away. And so it's still important to ask yourself, if you are thinking about the best possible future for yourself and career longevity, it might still, behoove you to keep all possibilities open by getting those qualifications that some really good jobs will always require.
You've got another question here that's just come in, and she wants to know, what do you think? What do you think the older generation? Um, how can I say this? What do you tell businesses about the next generation of employees?
Oh, absolutely. I've written a lot about kind of generational dynamics in the workplace because I think particularly a few years ago, something I was hearing from some older managers in the workplace was that they were experiencing some sort of culture clashes. And the themes that they highlighted were that sometimes they saw young people not as focused on sort of hierarchies of authority as maybe older generations were, or younger people were coming into the office right away wanting to take on responsibility and independence over certain projects. They wanted autonomy and agency. That was something that was really important to them. And so, what I would say, or what I do often say to older generations in the workplace, is that often that doesn't come from a disrespect for authority. What it comes from is an eagerness and a sort of self-starting quality to a younger generation of workers. And I hear this firsthand from talking with a lot of younger workers, that they come into the workplace eager to prove themselves, and surrounded by young people who have really sort of been the bosses of their own careers, whether that's because they're doing entrepreneurial things or building their own brands on social media. So even those going into traditional offices might come in with a little bit less of an expectation of following traditional hierarchies of authority. So I would say for both generations, for the younger generation, it can be important to keep in mind um, that even if you're very eager to prove yourself and to kind of direct yourself, sometimes you might be surprised by the things you can learn from the wisdom of those with a lot of experience. And so to come in sort of pairing that enthusiasm with an eagerness to also learn from people who have sort of been in that position before. And to older generations, I would say that it can be often helpful to embrace the excitedness and the enthusiasm of that younger generation, because often it's really just coming from a place of wanting to hit the ground running and make great contributions.
What do you think is the biggest mistake that teens make when they sit down to think about a career?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I would say there can be a limitedness to focusing on the types of jobs that we're made aware of on television shows and in books. Like anyone who has watched, medical soap operas or legal soap operas, the, Grey's Anatomy and Law and Order, gets fixated on there only really being a certain number of jobs available to anyone, especially to high performing people. So what I would say is, first of all, just draw the circle of possibilities as large as possible. And that will prepare you both for finding a job that really aligns with what you love and what you're good at, and with all the ways that the workforce and the world is changing. Because we don't know exactly what the jobs of tomorrow are going to look like. I talk with lawyers all the time who are now wondering how ChatGPT and AI is going to change the way they do legal work. I talk with doctors and medical transcriptionists and nurses who are finding that AI is coming into the hospital and changing medical work in all different ways. So I would say, first of all, drawing the circle of possibilities widely, but also not counting yourself out. Because I think something I learned even from myself early on is I always thought a writer is the sort of job that's never going to be possible to really make workable. That's just the kind of thing I'll always do in my spare time. And so I would say, and that was, I think, why I started applying for all sorts of jobs in other industries, like the tech industry, that I thought would be kind of safer, maybe more prestigious. And so I would say, don't count yourself out, and really take seriously your own interests. Because if you exploit those, if you go really deep on them as you continue to develop, I think you can find a career that's connected to them, even if it's not the most obvious preset career that comes to mind. So I would say those two things: think really big and imaginatively, and then definitely don't count yourself out, because if there's something you love doing and you remove that from the day-to-day of your job, there's going to be ways in which, you're going to feel that sense of longing to be doing what you love.
Great advice. An hour of great advice. Emma, thank it was wonderful. Thank you so very much. I'm coming back at 7 o'clock. You're coming back at 7 o'clock. And I hope everyone will tell everyone that we will be back at 7 o'clock, and hopefully they can join us. So thank you, all the folks at Met and Michelle and students. It was great having you here. Emma, can't wait to have you back. Thank you, College of
Thank you
DuPage as
so much
well.
for this.
Thank you,
Wonderful.
everyone. See you next time. About that.
Yeah, I just want to talk about basically, right now, I think for young people, they're at a point in their career where the number of different directions they could go in can feel overwhelming. And I want to encourage young people to embrace that sense of multi-directionality right now, because you're not, you want to find your general North Star, find the values and the why and the meaning that point you in a very general direction, but don't limit yourself in terms of, one very specific point in a map. Think about the many different paths that you could take to get there. Think about using all the tools that we just talked about to go as broad as possible as an explorer, not just an exploiter. And just, yeah, I know we're getting tight on time, so I just want to say, don't feel like you're just trying to get to one fixed point on a map. Embrace like the many different directions your career could go in when you're at this very early stage. That's an important thing to remind young people.
Absolutely. So much good here, Amy. So much, Emma. So this is what, I love when you talked about, think not in terms of a dream job, but a dream role.
Yeah.
Blocking that out. I think that's really, really key. And I love when you talked about ask the why. Yes, I want to be a doctor, but why? Why? And then go a little deeper each time to really get at what it is about this particular job that really interests you. Of course, talking about a growth mindset is so valuable. We've hosted Carol Dweck.
Oh, wonderful.
And I don't think we can talk about her thoughts about growth mindset. We're just not there. We don't have that skill yet. Embracing the failures as a way to learn, embracing the risks. I'm so glad you talked about that. So what you want us to do, you want us to, we should, when looking at this world of work, find what you love, find what you're good at, what you can get paid for, what the world needs, and have a voice in that. It's not just beyond that dollar value, but what it is that is going to bring you that passion to your work. So much good here. So we've got a question here in the chat here. Let's talk about what employers say is the most important trait that they see in good candidates that will set them apart from others.
Oh, that is a really great question, because something I hear over and over again is willingness to learn.
Mm.
Which I think can be counterintuitive, because people go into a job interview ready to talk about what they've already learned and their skills. An underrated opportunity there is to talk about your own skill as a learner. So talking about your excitement to continue building on the talents and the lessons that you've already learned. And I would just encourage people, especially when they're going to job interviews, don't just talk about job, talk about career, because people want to hear that you are there to learn and to grow with them, and that you're committed to longevity in the workplace. So I would say emphasizing career growth and, the willingness to learn. Those are all qualities that help signal to the employer that you're there for the long haul and not just ready to get in and out.
You talked about the toast resume. I think that's a great concept. Will you talk about that just a little bit more?
Absolutely. So this is comes from a colleague of mine, David Brooks, has written about how everyone has their resume virtues and their eulogy virtues. I like to change it to graduation toast virtues. What that means is that your resume virtues are all the things that when you're sitting down to write a resume, that's what comes into your mind first. Like, I know how to code. I got this grade in AP US history. I won this award from my high school. Your graduation toast virtues are the qualities that people would talk about when they're giving a speech about you at your graduation. And that actually would often have nothing to do with the test scores that you got, the awards you've won, or the certifications you've gotten. That has to do with the way that you show up for the people in your lives. The moments when you're really willing to help out family members, the things you do for your neighbors and friends, the way you show up in your school community. And the reason those matter so much in a job search is also because it's actually the graduation toast virtues that come to mind first when people are thinking to recommend you for jobs, write recommendation letters, start to help you out in your job search. So counterintuitively, it's the graduation toast virtues that can be even more important than the resume virtues in the context of a job search.
You made a great point about the value of personality assessments to find out your strengths. I also love what you said about get good at the skills that AI will not be able to do. Talk about that again. That's so critical.
Yeah, absolutely. So I write about AI in the workplace a lot, and I hear from a lot of fearful workers. And that some of them point to the numbers and they say, this many jobs are going to be wiped out. I actually think not that many jobs will be wiped out, but most of those jobs will be transformed. So they'll look totally different than they do today. One of the number one things that AI will never be able to do better than humans is manage people, interact with people, lead, and be a team player. So that's actually, a skill that people can learn, whether in extracurricular activities like team sports and debate, and even newspaper and service groups. Basically, learning how to be a team player, to lead and to motivate peers. That's something AI will not be able to do. Another one is actually developing a creative voice and imagination. So AI is basically learning off of what humans have already put out into the world. So they're not good at thinking up fresh ideas. So whether what excites you is learning about history or being a fiction writer or any other skill, what you can practice doing is creative thinking and creative and critical thinking. And that can be practiced in the context both of the classroom and extracurricular activities. Just learning how to not just synthesize and use data and work with information, but imagine, think creatively, think critically.
I've heard one of our speakers in the past talked about well, strength based. Let's work at that together. And then when you see a passion in your child, throw gasoline on it. So,
Mhm.
but I also love your thought about when it comes to extracurriculars while you're still in school, maybe go a different direction. And so you can, well, talk about that. Why is that important?
Absolutely. Well, high school especially is the moment in your life when you actually have the most bandwidth to take risks and to fail. And so when we talk about the growth mindset and pushing into terrain that you might not think you're good at or have the skills or abilities for, high school is like the moment in your life when you're best positioned to try those things that you might fail at because the rewards are that have you have the highest possibility of rewards, lowest possibility of risk. And so in the explore exploit dilemma, you're never better positioned to explore rather than exploit than when you're young, and in particular before college. There's a concept with the explore exploit dilemma called local maxima, which means when you're climbing to the top of a a little peak, like let's say you're getting really good at practicing one song on the piano, you might think there's another even more challenging, even more rewarding mountain I can climb out there. But to do that, I'll first have to get off this mountain that I'm currently on and start the whole upward journey again. Well, you're never better positioned to do that than pre-college. So that's why I would say that high school period is a really good opportunity to certainly throw gasoline on the things that light you up, but also let yourself be surprised by things that you've already written off, but might actually set you on fire in unexpected ways.
Beautiful. Here's a question. How should I talk to my middle school, even high schooler, about future careers and career exploration when it all seems so far away to them?
Absolutely. Well, that's where I want to go back to a couple of the tools I talked about. One being talk to them about their heroes and role models, because that helps them kind of personify what those far off careers could be, and it also can help start to get them excited. So if they, even have like a favorite fictional doctor on television to start to help them get in the mindset of thinking that could actually be you one day, that hero that you have on a medical show, or if they have a favorite athlete who after their sports career has gone on to be a leadership coach, which is something a lot of athletes do, starting to help them make the connection between heroes in their life, and that includes people that they know, friends and neighbors, and what the far off future could look like. And then the other thing is starting to get at the why, because while jobs and careers can feel far off, the why of helping people think about, like, why do you love to help out? Why do you love to help your neighbor on this particular task? Is it because you love being outdoors in nature? Or why do you love when it turns to art class? Is it because you love to create and to imagine? So to help them kind of dwell in that space of possibility and re-inhabit the feeling of what it feels like when they're feeling most alive and like their gifts are being recognized, and then start to draw the connection, however tenuous, to what it'll look like to be in the workforce after college.
Hmm. Where can I find data to share with my kids, middle and high school, about why introducing the connection between their current studies and future careers is important?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. Well, I mean, there's so many wonderful writers who work on this subject. I mean, Carol Dweck is certainly one of them, and Robert Hellman is a great resource. I like to consult, resources like the Aspen Institute. There's different think tanks that have research on what makes a good job. But there's also, I think, in Illinois particularly, there's the PWR Act, which was a law that was passed in 2016, which makes set certain parameters around what job readiness looks like at different stages. So in other words, it says by the end of ninth grade, your child should have done X, Y, and Z. By the end of 10th grade, they should have done these other requirements. So I would recommend checking out the PWR Act's website, because that actually breaks down at different ages what job readiness looks like.
That leads into this question. My kid's high school is starting to put together college and career readiness programming. Is there an essential activity that they should include that employers say is helpful? Maybe internships, mentoring, or are there questions that I should ask the school about their program for college and career readiness to ensure that it's robust?
Definitely, job shadowing. I think one of the most important things for young people is just the opportunity to be in a workplace where they can start to see, for example, they can start to see what it looks like for someone to be doing their dream role or dream career, and they can also start to even build those early skills, and they might even make unexpected connections that'll help them get that first internship when they're in college, or just prepare them with some of the vocabulary and the skills to walk into college confident that they can imagine what their dream role and career looks like.
Is there a mistake that students and parents make when they're sitting down to have this conversation about future of work and careers?
I think one mistake is limiting it to one specific job and saying this is the only thing that, you want to be a doctor. Okay, let's set our minds on that and give ourselves no slack to imagine other things. Because even within healthcare, there's healthcare management, there's nursing, there's, medical consulting, there's getting a research science degree. So any particular field I think is so much more expansive than anyone can imagine. And so I would advise not getting too fixated on one specific job, and instead exploring whole fields fields, and also starting to highlight skills that are interchangeable between different roles and careers.
Excellent. For our last question, what are some final words you want to say to the students and you want to say to the parents?
Absolutely. I think people can feel a little bit of doom and gloom around this moment in the workforce because so much is changing so quickly, especially with regards to technology. And we often think about the jobs that will go away because of new technologies, as opposed to all the new jobs that will be created. Something that an expert I was interviewing recently told me is that the real people who might stand to gain from new technologies in the workplace are actually not, the least skilled people who won't necessarily teach themselves how to use those new technologies, or the absolute geniuses who are already the stars in their field. It's really most of the population. It's everyone in the middle who can sort of start to say, I'm going to identify my strengths, and then I'm going to use technology to augment those strengths and to make myself even more efficient, even more effective, and even more valuable as a worker. So I would just advise people to get excited about the possibilities of the way the workforce is changing rather than to feel afraid or even to feel doom and gloom. And then the one other thing that I would say is, again, the people who are going to have the most longevity in their career are the people who show up at work every day feeling like they're doing what they were born to do, what they're meant to do, and what their calling is. So the earlier you can help people start to figure out what lights me up and what do I love doing, the more you're going to set them onto a path of success. People talk a lot right now about younger generations being the job hopping generations who only stay in a job for 1, 2, or 3 years. But I think people who are best off are people who find the things that they love doing so much so that they want to stick around in those jobs for the long term.
I love your passion, your wisdom. You've got a great experience here that you've shared with us tonight, and I'm so very grateful. Thank you for the gift of this day with Emma Goldberg. Thank
This
you
was
so
such
much.
a treat. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. See everybody next time. This is where we go hug the kids, Emma. So we're
Oh, I wish I was there to do the same.
thank you, everyone. See you next time.